John DeSando.
Classics, let's go to the movies and share some popcorn, soda pop with our friends. Turn off our cell phones and get away. Night or day, it's John DeSando on the radio. We'll watch the credits from up high and low. Cinema Classics on air.
Cinema Classics is produced and hosted by John DeSando. Listen to shows Thursdays at 8:01 p.m. on WCBE 90.5 FM. And listen to shows and read reviews online at WCBE.org.
I'm John DeSando,
And I'm Mary Yerina.
and this is Cinema Classics. And Mary, we have a classic this time, all right? Now, you usually will pick off what's out there and claim that it's related to classic, just for us to get a contemporary movie. This is real. This is the real deal.
This is the real deal.
And this is called Cool Hand Luke, which, till you saw it, didn't mean anything to you, but it means a lot to me because Paul Newman was perhaps the biggest star when I was growing up.
And I can understand why.
Yeah, and boy, this Cool Hand Luke, even my kids gave me, for one of my birthdays, they gave me a collage, and in the middle it says, "Man has to go his own way." Right?
Quoted directly from the movie.
Yes, right, directly from that movie. So Cool Hand Luke means a lot. And why are we doing this, Mary?
Well, this happens to be one of the films that's part of the Kappa Summer Movie Series, and this is airing on Friday, June 27th, which is coming up.
Yeah, that'll be tomorrow.
Yes,
Yeah.
at the Ohio Theater.
At the Ohio Theater. And wow, you want, for 95-degree weather, you want a very nice place to be.
You do, and it's air conditioned.
Oh, it is. And so going to that theater, and there's plenty of parking around.
There is, and,
People worry.
and the other thing that's really beautiful about it is that theater was built for movies during the silent era, and so they still play the Morton organ as part of the lead up to showing whatever classic film they're showing. And in this case, you'll have an opportunity to see a film that, although it's on television occasionally and it's streaming on almost every service, this will be on the big screen.
Yeah.
And that's the way it was intended to be seen.
And it is a Technicolor.
It
You know,
is.
you can get some sense of the richness of the color. You see it on your machine, but not, just as you're saying, not in a theater like that with a big
No.
screen. So Cool Hand Luke, set it up, Mary.
So we follow the journey of Luke Jackson. I think that was his last
I
name.
think you're right.
We follow the journey of Luke as he is caught vandalizing public property. Right at
It's
the
very
beginning.
funny.
He's drunk and he's cutting the heads off of
Parking meters, and when he's asked by one of the bosses at the camp why he did it, he says, he just wasn't thinking.
He truly wasn't. But as a result of that, he's sentenced to 2 years of hard labor on a chain gang prison in Florida. And so we follow him in that journey of arriving at the prison, how he establishes himself with both the guards and his fellow prisoners, and his many attempts to escape.
Yes.
That, and it's pretty harsh. And I had heard about this film. It was actually made when I was 2 years old, so it wasn't something that I would have seen in my youth. But I certainly, as I became familiar with cinema and Paul Newman's career, heard about this film, how wonderful his performance was. George Kennedy won an Academy Award for Best Supporting
My
Actor.
goodness. I mean, you can see him playing goofy roles later on, but never anything like this.
Yes, and he really is the counterpoint to Luke in how they really become the leaders of the prison culture, the prison community amongst the prisoners. So,
And I think, Mary, that George Kennedy's role as Dragline is paternalistic. It turns paternalistic.
it does turn
At least brotherly. But then there are times he calls him his baby. Now, as character arcs go, I just love this one. I love how it changes from this
Sure.
rough and tumble guy to actually feeling love for Luke.
Well, and I think it shows, as most prison films do, and part of my hesitancy was it's always the brutal nature
Yes.
of the people who are in prison and what they may have done, but then also the prison environment itself, and both prisoner to prisoner and guard to prisoner. So I'm always hesitant to watch these films because it's just hard
I don't blame you.
to be exposed to that. But you do see in this film, through both Luke and through Dragline and the family that they form, how complex humans are. Because even though these men are in this situation because they broke the law, and they're in these brutal conditions in Florida, being basically forced to work on roadside chain gangs, doing what I thought was really stupid work of cutting back weeds with hand
Oh my.
tools, and having to shovel sand onto a freshly tarred road, and in just brutal conditions.
Because they're using their scythes. I thought, it's almost a musical, the way in which they're all synchronized.
Yes, they get into rhythm with
Yeah.
each other. But you see them doing this work and having squabbles, but they do genuinely start to care
Oh, yeah.
for one another. The fellow prisoners come to like and respect Luke and are cheering him on, thinking he's
What do they
escaped
respect
and made
about
it.
him, Mary? That's a good point. What is heroic about our Luke?
Well, I think this was filmed in the 60s, and that was very much a time of civil strife in this country with anti-establishment sentiments,
Yes.
especially related to the Vietnam War, to civil rights, and to women's rights. So we have Luke, who refuses in spirit and in deed to succumb to the man, the establishment.
Yes.
So I think his fellow prisoners are rooting him on because he's willing to express that when sometimes they aren't, in order to get along.
He
Yeah.
even says at one point, "Stop feeding off me."
Yes.
So he has become their symbol of freedom. Well, not one of them has the guts to face down. I don't blame them. You got the man with no eyes, those glasses.
Who wears the mirrored
I
aviator
know.
glasses.
Oh,
yes.
And Strother Martin as the captain.
Yes.
No,
Also known as the warden, for those of you who aren't familiar.
And he has one of the most famous lines in movies.
It
Mary.
is, and it's officially, I think, on the AFI list of 100 best movie quotes.
Sure. And what's the quote?
We seem to have a failure to communicate.
After he hits Luke and Luke falls down,
Right.
he says, "We have a failure to communicate." He doesn't even say it in the way that I think people repeat it. They put
Yeah.
more of an accent on it, and they more of a good old boyish, and he kind of just lays it out there. We have a failure to
We have a
communicate.
failure to communicate. And actually, Luke quotes that back to him at the end.
Yes,
of
he
the film.
does. Yeah, right. That's the very last thing he says.
Yes.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, that's a really good point.
But that phrase, you'll hear it in other films now. You'll hear it parodied and things.
There's
And
one-
and this has been, 58 years since the film was
Mary.
released.
I mean, next to "I don't give a damn" or whatever, there are very few lines that many people would repeat and probably not even know where it comes from.
Yeah.
And it kind of sneaks up on you in this movie.
Yeah, another thing about this movie is the score was nominated for an Academy
Thank
Award.
you.
And the scene where they're racing to sand the tarred
Yes.
road, that music became part of the intro for numerous news broadcasts and still is used today. And so people don't even realize that was actually part of a film score.
Yes.
And when you hear it in the film, especially for somebody like me who's seeing it for the first time, I'm like, wait a minute. I know that music.
Well, the beautiful thing about that set piece is not so much the tar and how we would all hate. I tarred a roof one time at a factory. It's brutal. Not that, but the way in which they devised a scheme to get back at their bosses. And actually, it's the object. It's not what you would have thought.
Right.
You thought like, well, they'll lie down and not work. No, they're actually going to ramp up their work.
Right. They ramp it up so that when they finish, there's nothing to do for 2 hours as opposed to having to work that entire time. And Luke leads that effort.
Yes.
And it's interesting, you talked about them looking up to him. There has been much analysis made of the film and the character of Luke, of having biblical and Christian reference.
Well,
And the one scene where it really struck me is the prisoners in an effort to entertain themselves bet who can eat the most hard-boiled eggs. And Luke says, "I'll eat 50." And he does do it. And at the end, he's laying on the table, practically food comatose, but he's stretched out like Christ crucified, even
Yes.
with his feet being crossed
Yeah.
and his arms
Yeah.
extended.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of references like that.
and I appreciate it, particularly in the 60s, they're not quite as used to all the references that we'll get in contemporary movies with speech. And so that was a startling image, and it was a high-angle shot looking
Yes.
down at him, splayed
Yes.
out like Christ on there. And when you think about it, there is something Christ-like about Luke.
Right.
There's something Savior about him. All right, Mary Yerina, goodness, I think we've just started.
We have.
Thank goodness for our station forcing me to do a podcast, because now we can go into it and talk about Newman in the 60s. And, so Mary, it's called Cool Hand Luke. It is Paul Newman, however you look at it. Tell me, what do you advise our audience?
It is considered a classic film, not just by us, but
Sure.
by numerous authorities across the movie spectrum. And in terms of his performance and George Kennedy's performance, and lots of character actors that you will recognize as
People who are older
prisoners.
than you, including me.
When I saw Ralph Waite, I was like, wait a minute, that's Papa Walton.
Well, when I saw...
But it is worth seeing. It's not for children, and if you can catch it on the big screen this weekend at the Ohio Theater, it's $4 a ticket if you buy a strip of 10, and it's about $4 to rent it on streaming. So go see it on the big screen.
And I'll still try to find out whether Dennis Hopper has a line or not. But he has...
a discernible line. I see his lips move a
I
little
know.
bit, but I can never tell what he's
What
saying.
a great face for this, and who would have known how famous he would become.
Yes, and Harry Dean Stanton.
Oh,
as well.
Harry Dean Stanton.
And Wayne Rogers.
Yes,
There's
yes.
just so many great character actors in this that you're just like, oh my gosh, I know all of these people.
I'm John DeSando.
Cinema, 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 cinema. Classics, let's go to the movies and share some popcorn, soda pop with